Hello, everyone, and you welcome another appointment with POP, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that will change your life forever. So, today we talk about hypnotherapy and what hypnotherapy can do and how can help people with trauma from childhood. In front of me, next to me, actually, not in front of me, next to me, there is Jessie Reynolds. She is a 5 years experience hypnotherapist, and I wanted her here because I really enjoyed the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, and I think it been very interesting, especially because you work in such a fantastic field that too many time we underestimate. Okay, so you welcome, Jesse. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, just to start and to help people understand who you are and what you do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What leads Jesse to become hypnotherapist?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a hypnotherapist, diploma in hypnotherapy, trauma-informed training. I'm also a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming. I guess what led me into this was my own lived experience of suffering with childhood trauma, CPTSD, and just trying to find a way to feel better. So yeah, I guess I made a decision at a critical time of my life where I was really struggling that I needed to find a way to feel better. And so I sort of went on the hunt and tried different things for the next 10 years to help me to move through my trauma and to change the patterns that were reoccurring in my life, because I knew that these things were happening and I was stuck in these patterns of self-loathing and unhealthy relationships and using things like alcohol and drugs to feel better. But I didn't know how to stop these things from playing out. I didn't know how to be different. I had the self-awareness, but I didn't know how to change the patterns, and my body was chronically stressed. I was suffering with chronic illness and things were just going downhill really quickly. So yeah, I decided to try to find different ways to heal, and I tried so many different things over the years, from kinesiology to yoga to acupuncture to standard talk therapy, and all these things helped a little bit. They were all part of like stepping stones to get me a little bit along further in my journey, and they all helped me to a certain to understand myself. All was sort of pieces of the puzzle, but they weren't really giving me what I needed, which was something deeper than I needed things that were to go deeper than what they were going, and things that could actually change how my nervous system was responding to my environment. And that was when I came across, probably about eight years into the piece, I came across neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy. And after one session, I just felt such a huge difference that I couldn't really explain, but it was like my nervous system had just calmed down a whole lot and I didn't feel as anxious, and this feeling didn't go away. And I just knew that after one session that things had shifted on such a kind of a dramatic level. And then I realized that I think maybe this is what I've been missing, and I was so interested in it. I decided to study it and just kept moving down that pathway of learning and growing and using the tools myself to heal my own body and my own nervous system. And the more I did it, the better I felt. So
I understand. So, how much our life history, shape what we do in adulthood? Your story is a great example of that. Can I ask you? We have in our culture, we have a view about hypnotherapy. That is like the guy that look at this individual, okay, and say, "Look at my eyes, look at my hand, and now slowly you become a chicken, and then please start jumping." You know, so this is the cultural thing about hypnotherapy. But what actually is hypnotherapy?
well, that is more stage hypnosis, and that's hypnosis for entertainment, which is very different from hypnotherapy that is done for, like, hypnosis done for therapeutic reasons. Yeah, when you think of hypnotherapy, most people think of clucking like a chicken and somebody waving like a pendulum in your face, or being
Yeah.
like asleep on a couch while somebody speaks subliminal messages into your mind and controls your mind. And it can be that, but most people don't do it like that anymore. And hypnotherapy is very flexible, so it can be done in many different ways, and it has many, many different applications, which is why it is so helpful. But basically what's happening on a basic level is that we take a person's focus and we shift it to something that is important. So if you're focusing, say you're focused on a problem, we help to shift your subconscious mind to focus on the solution. And what's happening is this is happening in a relaxed state. So your body is relaxed, and we're bypassing the gateway between your conscious mind and your subconscious. So your conscious mind is only really responsible for maybe 10% of all the decisions, thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you have. It's the unconscious body, which is maybe probably about 90% of everything. And all your decisions, thoughts, feelings, and emotions are coming from your subconscious. And so the hypnotherapy bypasses the gate between the subconscious and the conscious mind. So we can go down to the subconscious programming, and we can change the way you basically updating your software. In your unconscious mind is your software that runs your brain and your body, and we go in there and we can help to update that software from being old, outdated, unuseful software to being more useful and more updated and more in line with your beliefs today.
So actually, we can, with hypnotherapy, you can reach the deepest behavior, because we create behavior to make sure that we are okay, that we are safe, and you have them to change them, correct?
Yeah, well, based on whatever results the clients want to get, then that's what we can do. The hypnotherapy that I do, because I focus on trauma and childhood trauma and relational trauma, it's done in a very trauma-informed way. So as I say, you can do hypnotherapy in many different ways. And for the way that I do it with my clients is that it's just an eyes closed conversation where the client can still respond, they can walk, they can talk, they can get up, they can stop the session, they're in control of their body, they understand what's happening within their mind. It's a collaboration. So their eyes are closed, and we sort of go on a little journey together, and quite often we're regressing back into memories, and we do it in a really safe, trauma-informed way. And the client they always need to give permission in order for this to happen.
Okay. So is actually you ask them the permission to go in their childhood place, and together you look what's going on, correct?
Yeah, so it's always very targeted. We don't just go in there guns blazing without a plan. We don't just open Pandora's box into your childhood memories. We generally will talk about things first, understand what it is you're wanting to work on, what the root cause of the problem is. Together we find out where the root cause of that, where it stemmed from, and that's when we can go back to a particular memory or moment in your childhood and help you to change the way that you see it now, because your nervous system still sees it with your childhood eyes. And when we go back with hypnotherapy, we take your adult self along for the ride, and it helps to for your body to see it from an adult's perspective now instead of a child's perspective.
Very interesting. Why childhood trauma is so misunderstood and minimized in adult life? Why, when you talk with people, it happened many times to me, I try to understand what's going on, understanding the history of the family. But many times, if I want to stay in that spot a little bit, people tell me, I don't want to talk about this because I don't think it's important. That actually is important, for the simple reason that that moment that you don't believe is important is what shape you. So why this is so minimized and misunderstood in adult life?
I guess a lot of the time there's a few reasons. I guess the first reason being that a lot of the time maybe we don't even remember these things that happened in childhood. All of our programming is happening between the ages of 0 to 7, and a lot of those years we don't actually remember. So that programming just becomes part of our subconscious, and it just sits there and we're not really aware of it. Also probably because maybe your caregivers minimized what was happening to you during childhood. So, to them it was no big deal. They thought there was nothing wrong, and so the attitude is, we'll just get on, we carry on. We don't, it is what it is, we don't make a fuss. Just get on with it, basically, is the attitude. And so you develop that attitude as well. And because it happened such a long time ago. And then also because whatever happened to you in childhood, it became what feels normal for you. So a lot of the times as adults, we have no idea that the way that we're acting as adults actually is coming from the way we were programmed in childhood. And because it was normal, we don't actually realize that there's anything wrong with it until we see other people's experiences and we think, oh, actually what I experienced in childhood, I don't think that was normal because other people didn't experience that.
So true what you're saying. I have a question. Can you tell me what is a definition of a trauma in this case?
Well, I think over the years it's become a little bit more flexible, but in psychology terms, you have big T traumas, which are different types of abuse, going through a natural disaster, being in war, childhood, things happening to you in childhood repeatedly, dysfunctional family, being in a household that had drug and alcohol abuse. Those tend to be recognized as big T traumas. And then there's little T traumas like losing maybe distant family members, losing a pet, being bullied at school, things that maybe seem like they're lower down in intensity, in emotional intensity. So that's a psychological view. And then there's a lady called Dr. Sarah Woodhouse, and she says that trauma can occur anytime you feel threatened, out of control, and like your life is in danger, basically. So, that sort of broadens the scope. The way I tend to look at it is as an emotional wound, and emotional wounds can range in severity and intensity, and just like a physical wound, right? Like a physical wound may be a deep stab or lots of tiny little cuts or a really deep gash that needs some stitches, and each different type of wound is going to need a different type of method to help it heal. You might have an infection in your bone, it's like, so emotional wounds, I think, can be very similar to that, to physical wounds.
So, to be specific, what create these scars or cut or injuries? What is actually what we're talking about here?
Well, I mean, lots of different things, right? Anything that can make you feel threatened, scared, out of control, anything that you have an emotional reaction to. There's a test called the ACE test, which is the Adverse Childhood Experiences test, and on that is things like neglect, not having enough food, not knowing if you were going to be safe as a child, having a parent who was suffering with mental health issues or drug and alcohol issues, having a parent who wasn't present emotionally or physically. So in childhood, those are the things that can cause different types of emotional wounds. And there's things like death and abuse and unhealthy relationships, and there's so many different things, and it does depend on the person's perspective of how they process that. So some people are more resilient to trauma than other people, depending on the type of nervous system that you have. And that all comes back to your environment in childhood that you grew up in as well.
So do you think the trauma that we have in childhood have more power than the trauma that we have in adulthood, in our life?
The important thing about childhood trauma is that your brain is a sponge and it's just been formed. So when you're experiencing adverse things in childhood, it's literally forming the way that you respond to stress. It's it's, it switches on different parts of the brain. It shuts different parts of the brain down, which can create a lot of different problems for people in adulthood. It sets you up for chronic illness. It sets you up for different health issues, different mental health issues. People who experience childhood trauma are a lot more susceptible to disease and sickness in adulthood. And not only that, obviously there's the triggers and the actual trauma. People who experience childhood trauma are more likely to experience adulthood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's priming your nervous system to be more susceptible to trauma in adulthood, and not just trauma, but health issues as well. So, I mean, I don't know if one is worse than the other, but I think that if you experience it in childhood and then you experience more trauma in adulthood, it's like compounding one on top of the other. If you don't have a lot of, from my experience working with clients, if an adult comes to me and they haven't had adverse childhood experiences, they tend to process their trauma a lot quicker than somebody who has had a lot of childhood trauma and adult trauma.
Mm. So in adulthood, we are more aware about ourselves, so we can handle better some situation. Yeah, okay. How, because in this podcast we talk about relationship and couples, love. So how can you explain us to the listener how the emotional neglect or abuse, trauma in early childhood shape the relationship in the future? So how these shape the choice that we make about our future partner?
Yeah, well, I would say all you have to do is like look at nature, right, and look at animals in the wild. It's monkey see, monkey do. So that's how we learn. When if a lion has a cub, the cub learns how to be a lion through the mother. Through the father, learns how to have relationships through the mother, through the father. Humans are exactly the same. If in childhood we and it doesn't have to be just a mother or a father, it can be different types of caregivers, but if you didn't have a good model of what a healthy family structure looks like, and if your structure was unhealthy and unpredictable and unsafe and people didn't communicate well, which is a lot of people, like communication is only really starting to be understood now about like what healthy communication is. You take those things and let's remember, like, our brain is being primed at that time. It's a sponge, it's just absorbing everything. So your brain is being shaped by your environment, and then and that becomes your normal. And then you take that out and you mirror that out in the world, and that's when you attract those relationships that feel like normal, they feel like home to you, and then you go and play out those same patterns in your own relationships.
Yeah, so we follow. Now we're looking forward for what our brain is more comfortable with, even if it's bad, for the simple reason that our brain already knows that situation.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like it's better the devil that you know, the one that you don't. And a lot of the time, you're not even consciously aware that that's what's happening. I know for me, I had a pattern of unhealthy relationships, and I knew that it was happening, but I couldn't stop it. I didn't know why. I didn't realize it was because I had no measuring stick for what a healthy relationship actually looked like. So I just went to what was familiar, because that what is familiar to the brain is what is safe. And it's a very primal thing. We'll always go to what we know as opposed to trying something new, because we don't know what that new thing is. It might be good for us, but it also might not be. So the brain generally sticks to what it knows to try to keep us safe.
This actually happened, for example, if for example, me have a traumatic childhood, okay, and then have experience with partners that have similar situation. Maybe they are I don't know, violent, or there is some abuse, because anyway was the norm for my in my childhood. Then if I meet someone that is normal, that is assertive, doesn't have the same trauma, doesn't have the same patterns, don't give to me the same patterns, I find this person boring. correct. And then what I do, I just say, no, it's not for me. And then I jump to look for the bad behavior person for my partnership. That's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to understand that nobody does this really consciously. They don't understand that that's what's happening. They don't purposely choose to uh, disregard the nice person in their life. All they really know is that for some reason, and this is most of the time, there may be exceptions to this, but for some reason, the person that that is the healthy person for them to be with, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. It's like, it feels a bit scary. It feels a bit unknown. It's like, I don't know what this person is doing and I don't want it because it doesn't feel normal to me.
Mm.
And it's just kind of like an internal feeling of like a cheese grater on the inside of your soul. You don't understand,
Yeah.
but you reject it for some reason.
Yes.
And you find reasons for it consciously. I don't know, it was just some traits that you didn't like about it. But really, it was the fact that it was so unfamiliar to
Yeah.
you. And then you gravitate towards what's more familiar.
Yeah. In fact, then people, I don't know if it happened to you, but come here and say, why I cannot stay with a good guy, and I'm always looking forward to the bad guy. Well, because
Yeah.
there is a behavior that you learn many years before, even if you don't know, and you're more happy, if
Well,
that is the term, to stay in some dynamic than the other.
yeah.
This is
Yeah.
important. Reframe, understand what are the trigger, what are the things.
Yeah.
Now, I work a lot with writing. I find writing, journaling, and putting the effort to understand properly why you do what you do, what are the trigger, what you do helps. But I'm sure that hypnotherapy can be a huge, can have a huge, good impact on this process. That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the other important thing to understand about this is that if you do grow up in a chaotic environment, your nervous system is primed for chaos and drama, and so it's always running on that adrenaline, the cortisol, and these are drugs to the body. Like, these hormones are very addictive, and the body becomes addicted to your adrenaline and your cortisol. And so when you're with a nice, boring person, it's because you're not getting those same levels of adrenaline and cortisol pumping, which is why you end up gravitating back towards the drama. And the hypnotherapy can definitely help with this because it is subconscious. It's your nervous system is your subconscious. Hypnotherapy can help us to access where these patterns are stored, where this unhealthy software was uploaded in the first place, and we can change the way that your body feels about and responds to stress and these patterns, and we can kind of rewrite the patterns and create new healthy patterns.
Yeah, I like it. I love it. I think it's very important, especially for the people who really want to change the way they do things. Sometimes I understand why they do certain. They make certain decision, but it's not only for relationship, correct? It's business, is everything, correct?
Anything that you're doing subconsciously and you're doing without realizing, any pattern that you're stuck in, any frame of mind, any mindset, can all be shifted with hypnotherapy. And that is, obviously, there's some limitations to hypnotherapy depending on the type of brain you have and your neurotype and what's actually going on. So it has limitations at times, but if it's a subconscious mind problem, hypnotherapy can generally help with that.
Good. What are the behavior that we repeat, even we don't know that we do it, but we repeat because this trauma from childhood? Can you give us an example?
Yeah,
Some
so
examples, anyway. Yeah.
yeah, patterns in relationships, like anxious attachment styles, feeling unworthy and unloved and like you need love, gravitating towards those people who maybe don't treat us very well. And you've got the more avoidant attachment styles of people who move away from closeness and connection, and they seem to maybe self-sabotage relationships, not wanting to communicate, not wanting to connect. Those are some relational patterns that people might experience in relationships. And I think then there's yeah, there's other types of patterns like lying for no reason or not having the self-confidence you want to drive your life forward. That's a big one. Lots of people deal with that.
Self-esteem can be a part of that.
Sorry?
Self-esteem can be some.
Self-esteem, yeah, absolutely. Self-esteem issues, people-pleasing issues, boundary issues. These are all sort of subconscious patterns that we create to keep ourselves safe. And they probably were useful for a time, and it's probably just gotten to the point in your life where these things are no longer useful.
What is, can you explain me how it's look like for a typical hypnotherapy session? So what happened in your studio when you do? So I need to lay down and then close my eyes and then start to lift, or you put the pendulum in front of me. What's
No.
happening?
It's not that fun. It's a bit more boring than that. It's generally we just talk. I go through a specific process, so I've developed a specific process for my clients that we go through. We start off with, well, just firstly getting to know if the program is right for them and if it's going to give them what they want. Then we move into gathering their personal history, so getting the details of their personal history, understanding their family dynamics, understanding what their childhood was like. And then we understand, okay, from there, what problems, challenges are you experiencing in adulthood? And I like to help the client join the dots from what happened in their childhood to what's happening now. A lot of people are aware of it, but some people aren't. And so it can be a really interesting process to go through. And we generally spend about the first, I'd say, half an hour. I do 90-minute sessions. So the first half an hour to an hour, understanding what the problem is. And then we use hypnotherapy to access the root cause of that problem to help to change and clear out the problem. And the hypnotherapy, like I say, is just you close your eyes. For me, I work online with my clients because they can be at home on their bed, nice and relaxed. They can be in their pajamas. They can have their cup of tea and their whatever they need to make them comfortable. And they just close their eyes and I start to help them to relax so we can bypass that critical faculty in their mind, the gateway between the conscious and the unconscious. And then we regress back, and we do this in lots of different ways. And there's many different ways we can help somebody regress back to a certain memory and help them to see the memory and change the way they're associating to it. They would have been associating to the memory in a very negative, traumatized way. And we just help them to neutralize that feeling now as an adult, even if it's just knowing that they're safe now. And this changes the way the nervous system reads the memory, and then it affects the body differently. If we can neutralize it, then it's no longer a threat to the nervous system. And then we come back out and ask them how they're feeling and test the work that we've done and see how they feel about those issues now. And most of the time, there's generally quite a big shift.
Okay, so this was my next question. How quick the people can actually see some changes, some result with NLP and hypnotherapy?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's journey is different, but a lot of people can, if we do hypnotherapy in the first couple of sessions, you can feel the difference in the first couple of sessions. But it is a roller coaster. So especially if we're working through some intense trauma, it can, you can go up and down, and it can take a while for your conscious mind to integrate the work that we've done with their unconscious mind. So if we've made big shifts and big changes in your unconscious mind, that can sometimes shift your reality a bit too fast, and it can be like, oh, well, what's happening? Like, things don't feel right because my world feels so different. So with trauma, sometimes we need to move a lot slower. But with somebody who's, maybe got more acute trauma, not so much complex trauma, you can definitely make changes straight away. Everybody can make changes straight away, but it's a different ride for everyone.
Can you, with hypnotherapy, can you help people with addiction?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so one of hypnotherapy's main applications that people probably know of is like quit smoking hypnosis, which is a very common one.
What about gambling, alcohol, drugs?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know a lot of people probably have tried hypnotherapy for addictions and maybe not got the results that they want. And for me, I think this is probably because it comes down to, did we get to the root cause of the issue? So a lot of the time understand addiction, we have to understand why the addiction is present and what purpose it actually serves for the person, because a lot of the time it is there to help the person in some way, whether it be to stop you from feeling things, as a distraction, comfort. And so if it is a crutch and somebody's leg is broken, you don't just take away the crutch and expect the person to be able to walk. You have to heal the broken leg in order for them to be able to walk without the crutch. So if you haven't done that work, then you will just need the crutch back again.
Of course. So, can you tell us a story that you have of someone you work with that was a big success for you? An example.
Yeah, I've got lots of different examples from like many different clients. Yeah, I helped a girl or a woman work through an eating disorder that she had had for a long time, and we never really worked directly on the eating disorder itself. We worked through a lot of childhood trauma, and the eating disorder as a byproduct of that kind of took care of itself. I've worked with people with chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue and chronic insomnia. And once we get to the root cause of when those feelings started and when the issue started and we work through that, those things have resolved themselves. Yeah, I've seen a girl that I worked with. She had a really strong avoidant attachment. So she would sabotage all her relationships, from friendships and romantic relationships, and we helped her to work through the relational trauma that she had, and she recently just got married and she's pregnant. So yeah, there's been lots of success stories, and most clients always make lots of different shifts.
It's nice to see when the work actually is successful, and you can see the transformation of these people from when they come in and they go out in the world, and you can see that the difference between the first to the second is incredible.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It is truly amazing.
Talking about relationship, do not work on their trauma. What are the damage that they can inflict to their maybe good relationship, their relationship?
Yeah, I think it's if you don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, then you're probably likely just to keep doing it, right? So if you say you've got a partner and they're asking you to change the way you communicate or change the way that you are doing certain things within the relationship, even if it's small things, a lot of these small problems are attached to larger issues. And I guess, in relationships, you can start to become distant, or those little problems can start to create like separation between you and your partner. And so if you don't sort of understand why your patterns are playing out the way that they are, and you don't put that effort into working out why you do what you do, those things are probably not going to change themselves because they're happening on such a deep unconscious level. It's kind of like if you are trying to make these changes, or like if you're trying to lose weight or something, and it's like you go onto a diet and you do it really well for the first couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden you slip back into old habits. You stop going to the gym, you stop eating healthy, and it's just kind of happened, and you don't really know why it happened. It just happened, and you can be on that cycle of trying to make these changes and then slipping back, and that's your subconscious mind at play. That is you can only make so much conscious change until your subconscious will take over and revert back to its old patterns and its old ways.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And what are the damage that this can inflict in a relationship?
Well, the divorce rate is like 50%. So I would say that's probably like the biggest damage, right? And you see people doing that, like lying, infidelity. Yeah, intimacy issues, sex issues, issues with communication and honesty and vulnerability, and not having that connection that we all crave and desire, that intimate connection that everybody wants to be seen and felt and heard and understood by their partner. We can fail to be able to make that connection. And if you can't make that connection, you're probably never going to have the type of relationship that you want. And it's always going to seem like it's the other person's fault, or a relationship, or that person's just not right for me, which could be true, but also it can be the fact that you've not understood yourself and your own patterns and why they're playing out like that.
Mm. With hypnotherapy, can you help people with some sexual dysfunction as well, a disorder, hyper active sexual activity or lower sexual activity? Can you help with that too? Or
Yeah, 100%. I think we can basically help with any problem that's happening in the mind as long as the person is willing and wanting to explore and understand the root cause of that issue and is willing to do the deeper work. So basically, I say, hypnotherapy can pretty much help you with anything. You've just got to be willing to explore it, dive deep, want to know more. Hypnotherapy isn't a magic wand. It can't just, it's not something that I do to you. I'm not a magician. It's something that we do together. And at the end of the day, it's still your mind. If you don't want to accept suggestions or if you don't want to see things from a different perspective, you won't, and you'll just go back to normal. But yeah, it can help with basically most mental problems that we experience.
do you work with any gender, any age, any person want to help with hypnotherapy?
Yeah, 100%. Anybody. I pride myself in being a practicing ally, practicing allyship. So I'm very accepting of all people, all walks of life, experiencing all different types of issues.
What if someone say, well, if you work online is not as real as if you work in person? That's true.
I tend to think that it's just about the connection that somebody builds with somebody. And in regards to trauma hypnotherapy, the person being in their own environment, if their environment is safe, being in their own environment is actually really beneficial because the more relaxed a person feels, the better the hypnotherapy works. If you've had to rush to get to your appointment, find a park and battle in traffic and pay for parking, and then you're in a weird, strange office that doesn't feel like comforting to you, that can stop you from being able to relax into the session. So yeah, I think it's just all about what the client needs as well. But I personally find it really great for hypnotherapy working online.
If you can give practical advice to people that they suspect they have some struggle from childhood, what would you tell them to do?
I think if the person has not really looked at it before,
Mm,
maybe start journaling it, start writing it down,
mm,
maybe start reading some books or listening to some podcasts or
mm.
yeah, just those little things that you can do, reading about it on Instagram and just sort of understanding the basics of what our brains and bodies and nervous systems are doing in childhood can be really helpful. But it is a process. Depending on what stage you're at, you might want to go and do some standard talk therapy with a psychologist or a counselor to help understand yourself better, get some more self-awareness. That can be a really great starting point. I know that you can get a mental health care plan from the doctors that can help you to access therapy. Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can start to build that self-awareness. I think is really important. The more that you understand yourself, the better off you're going to be, the more light bulbs that are going to turn on for you and light the way, basically.
Yeah, journaling is something very good for the mental state.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Jesse, we are almost at the end of this interview. Thank you so much. So, if someone wants to work with you and is interested to work with you, Jesse, your website is Trauma Transformed, correct?
Yep. Trauma transformed.
Yep. And there is any ways that they can maybe send you an email or connect with you if you want to give us some ways to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So I have my email is jessie@traumatransformed.com. I also have an Instagram page, which is Jessie Reynolds _trauma hypnotherapy, I believe. I
Mhm.
have changed it a few times, but all my links are on my website anyway. So if you go to that website, you'll get to my Facebook page and my email, and I've got a podcast, Trauma Transformed, the podcast. You can hear my story on there, a bit more about my story, and there's lots of my clients have interviewed and they're on there, and there's other great stories of people moving through trauma. And information on trauma and childhood trauma on that podcast too.
Look, Jesse, I say thank you from all the community because is great to have people with such a big heart like you that actually want to help people to have a better life. Thank you to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun to talk about.
Before to end, for all of you that you listen this podcast, today we talked with Jesse Reynolds, hypnotherapist. Next week, we're going to talk with a couple, Josie and Daniel, and then we're going to talk about what is a healthy relationship with them. They are together for 4 years. It's not about the length of the relationship, it's about the quality of the relationship. If you stay with someone that for a long time, but you're not happy and is not healthy for you, we need to talk about what is a healthy relationship. And with them, we're going to discover what is a healthy relationship. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jesse. Thank all of you that you listen to this podcast. See you next week. Have a wonderful life from POP, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that will change your life forever. Ciao.